things differently
and I was
for
going
different
up,
reasons.
and all of a sudden my collision warning went off, and it was going to set the brakes on me.
This is almost cash.
I was going uphill and going around the corner.
Yeah, you don't want that.
No, so that's the only thing I didn't like about it, but the rest of it.
We do that,
really nice. I
we
mean,
do full
of course,
accrual.
I always
we
come down
modified
the hill,
accrual,
I come down the hill,
and then full
here I
accrual.
need
So
to
there's
be
like
in,
three
at the Jake
bases of accounting.
can hold me back
in
at,
your
so I'm
financials
not
for
touching my
government.
brakes a lot. And I mean,
Unless you're
the
full
mechanics, they love me
cash
because
basis,
I
which
just start to trust.
some small cities have gone that route.
I use the truck
Pretty much
for
eliminates you from
multiple
taking out
purpose and multiple
debt
use
because
of
the
it,
banks
so,
don't.
I mean, yeah, that may be a better driver.
Okay, what do you owe on these
So how long you been retired?
projects?
I
They want to
haven't
see
been retired
depreciate,
yet.
like you said,
Oh.
depreciation, so
So
they
you're
can see
still
how
working?
old it is.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'm a dispatcher, driver manager for
Yeah.
Thomas and Sons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I stopped 3 years,
I was
a
wondering about
little over
that
3
with,
years ago, I stopped.
You know, you get a new vehicle.
My wife passed away 4
You
years
write
ago.
off the whole thing.
And so my son, he was
Well,
7
if you're
at the
for-profit
time,
business.
now
and
he's
you can take
12.
the 179
so
deduction, but
I have to raise him.
All alone.
Well,
there's some tax.
my mom
advantages
helps
for that.
a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, I saw the two of you here a number of
So
times.
they're eliminating more and more of those.
What does he think about you being on the council now?
Electric
He thinks it's
vehicle
cool.
never really got full.
Yeah, he really does. He likes watching it. And a lot of it too is he likes seeing me do things.
Huh?
Because normally, he's my life. And that's all I do. Whatever I have him doing, that's
Yeah, I
what
mean, we have a $5,000 threshold.
Now he
So
gets
if it's
to
under
work.
5,000, you
Right,
just expense
so
it in your.
I don't like video games. So I bought a side-by-side.
It's
And
an
so
entire
we go out and
system.
we ride a lot.
Uh-huh.
We go camping and riding a lot.
Total system costs, but
So, yeah, that's just some of the stuff we get to do.
So what grade is he in now?
a good example
Huh?
now is.
What grade is he in?
Is in sixth.
Sixth grade. Did you go here?
Yeah, this year, he
I'm
first,
sure
he
there's no
just started
reason to
going over
depreciate
here.
it.
I had him over
Really?
at, Creswell.
Depreciate for 3 years.
Academy.
Is now.
You're at Nazareth Baptist
Yeah,
Church?
I had him over there for 3 years.
Okay.
After his mom passed, it was, like, I could take him to school.
Next week, and it'll-
It was just a smaller group
There's,
of people.
they've
Some of
been
the
having
people I knew
problems for
over
like
there.
the last couple weeks.
So,
Yeah,
I
they
kind
have.
of keep an eye on him as well as,
My IT guy just
because I was
keeps
kind of,
sending what
I mean.
Microsoft
after
said
wife
to
passed away,
them, you
so I
know,
was kind of
we're
really
trying.
holding on to him
Expect
as tight as
this
I
to
could.
go quicker.
And so it was just, and I think it was a good learning experience.
It's
Yeah, that
just,
really
what
works.
was it, just a search, right? What wasn't working on there, I think what it was.
Last year was the last year. He was getting
At one point, they bricked a
didn't
bunch of
think he was
machines. They
running
couldn't
the
even
machine.
get their
And it was holding it back.
mail service up and running.
Having a good
And
year?
it was a
Yes, right now he's having a really good year.
security patch.
Sharp kid, you know, he has his dinosaurs and his,
So it was a legitimate, but they should have
Transformers.
sandwiched it and tested, not sure.
Yeah,
with great authority on all
The
that.
operating system.
yeah, when he learns something, it's,
No,
he's so into it that,
You would figure
yeah,
something
he
that-
dives deep in it. and
That
He
important.
finds everything
They would
is
have to
a
have
note
like
about it.
safety measures in place for that.
We've,
You
I
know,
mean, some
'cause,
people
I
at the
mean,
church, they've given him dinosaur books and stuff
I'm
like
gonna
that.
say
He's
probably
just all over that.
3/4 of the world is on
So
Windows.
that's his big, that was his goal. you know,
Yeah, that's
for
what worries me is that
our paleontologist.
we are so
I'm trying to get
relying
him
on
some other
Microsoft for
science.
them to have the issues they've had.
All right, well, it's 6:03.
I guess we'll get
I'm
started.
Dave, how you doing?
Good.
What you been up to?
Oh, man. Teaching a lot of piano lessons and staying home on Monday nights. And Friday middays.
Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, good evening. Thanks for joining in person on this nice sunny afternoon. I guess it was a late night for a lot of people, the city council meeting, so it's just 4 of us or 5 of us. Try to get through the material quickly. I got a presentation on the budget, and basically it goes over the budget laws in Oregon and the process that Creswell uses to comply with those budget laws. And we'll start off with introductions. Spencer, do you want to start us off?
Spencer Nebel, interim city manager.
Mouthful. You know me.
Alan Dukes, the new city council.
Mark Kramer, City Council.
All right, thank you. Especially important being new to the council to come to tonight's meeting. This will be old hat after a while. But it's always good to refresh Dave's come to, I think, every one of these meetings since I've been here. Almost every one, at least.
I figured it was time for a refresher.
Well, tonight we're going to talk about budgeting Creswell. I got a question from Councilor Kramer about the size of our budget. City of Creswell has approximately $15 million operating budget with about $33.5 million in total resources. So, and as I explained to him, a lot of those resources, or approximately half of those resources, are reserves. So they're for big future projects. SDC reserves, system development charge reserves, are limited by state law to be used for specific projects that expand our current system. Road funds, by law, restricted to roads. And so I'll get further into that in the presentation, but I just wanted to get that out there to begin with. So local budget law, like I said, is written right in the Oregon Revised Statutes. 294.305 to 294.565 outlines the sections creating or constituting local budget law and its purpose. What it does is it establishes a standard procedure. So if you go to any city in Oregon, they're going to have the standard procedure. You shouldn't see a difference there as far as the ORSs are concerned. It outlines programs and fiscal policies. It requires estimates of resources and expenditures, and we'll get into that later on. Encourages citizen involvement. We do have one citizen to every city councilor on the budget committee, and that's required by the ORSs. And it controls expenditure of public funds. And there's a limit to what we can spend, and that is what the budget committee approves and the city council appropriates. Why do we follow budget law? Well, it's the law, and it has some civil liability. So you as councilors, and any public official who expends any public monies in excess of the amounts for any reason other or different purpose than authorized by law shall be civilly liable for the return of the money by suit of the district attorney of the district in which the offense is committed, or at the suit of any taxpayer of such district, if the expenditure constitutes malfeasance in office or willful or wanton neglect in duty. So it's a pretty serious charge we've been given to put together the budget and to adhere to the budget. So what is a budget? A budget is a financial plan. It contains estimates of revenues and expenditures for a single fiscal period or year. The City of Creswell operates within a fiscal year beginning on July 1st and ending on June 30th of each year. Budgeting allows local governments to evaluate its needs in light of the revenue sources available to meet those needs. A complete budget justifies the imposition of ad valorem, according to value, property taxes. And it's an internal control mechanism, which we share the budget and actuals monthly with department heads. They review them and comment back with anything that they see that's out of the ordinary. We can do an adjusting journal, well, investigate, and if there's something misclassified, do an adjusting journal entry. So it's a good internal control policy for the financial staff. But it's also an internal control of city councilors when you're looking at the operation of the city. It's a policy document. It funds the plans and priorities of the city. So the budget tries to follow, and should follow, the strategic plan that was set by the council. Currently we have a 5-year strategic plan for fiscal years 2022 to 2027. And Dave Strand was here when that plan was put together, and he probably remembers all the meetings, including a weekend that was spent on that document. It's a public communication document. expresses the city's goals to the citizens. So I talked about the budget committee and that it's comprised of citizens and city councilors, an equal number. And the primary role of this committee is to hear the budget message, hold the public meetings, hear the public comments, review and discuss the proposed budget, make revisions to the budget if necessary, approve the budget, and approve each tax rate. In this case, we just have the ad valorem property taxes for the city, and we have the urban renewal district, which is the incremental tax rate in the urban renewal plan area. The budget cycle, there's 9 steps to it. The city appoints a budget officer. It's, I believe in the charter, I apologize, Spencer, I didn't look this up this afternoon, but I believe it's in the charter that the city manager or their appointee is the budget officer. When I first started here, Michelle Amberg had appointed me budget officer and handed off the budget process. As Spencer can attest, they've got plenty on their plate. So more than happy to take that on. And of course, there's lots of input from city staff, all the department heads. And of course, councilor input. Again, the strategic plan is kind of a guide. We really start thinking about the budget as soon as the budget's passed. We're thinking about the next one. So as we go through the fiscal year, things come up in the meetings. We make notes, file it away for the next year's budget preparation. We start prepping that budget in January. Really, right now is when the rubber meets the road. I'm in spreadsheets pretty much every day, all day at this point. So we're going to prepare a proposed budget. Again, you'll get the budget as proposed. April 29th is when we'd like to get those budgets out to you. You can review them. We'll have the first meeting on May 6th. So you have a week to look at them. The budget kitty, okay, we have to publish a budget notice. That's really important. And there's specific guidelines on how that notice has to go out. Has to be published twice. So the public has ample chance. They have to be a week apart, and the second one has to be 5 days before the meeting. So it's really hard to have another meeting without having like 2 weeks to plan that next meeting. So we go ahead and plan at least 2 meetings, and there's room in the schedule if we have to have that third meeting. The committee approves the budget. Quorum is required. In this case, it would be 8 because there's 14, so we need 8 members. And the budget summary notice then, after the approval of the so you have the proposed budget, approved budget, budget committee approves it. Then we have to prepare a budget summary and notice. It goes out in a standard form. The state of Oregon provides LB1, which is a local budget 1 form that we have to have then published and have a public hearing at the city council meeting in June. Hopefully the budget gets adopted and appropriations are made. Taxes again are declared and categorized. And after that, then the budget gets filed. We have to file it with the Oregon Department of Revenue for our state shared revenues. And it also goes to the Lane County Assessor's Office so they can prepare tax statements. Budget fund and structure.
Hey, Jim, just on your schedule.
Sure.
One thing too that's really important for the council to be aware of is you absolutely have to adopt the budget before the end of June. And if you don't, then taxes don't get levied. There's major financial consequences if it's not adopted by the council before the end of June. So if for some reason it didn't get adopted at the first meeting in June, the council would have to hold a special meeting to do that before the end of the fiscal year. So
I have a question about how does this budget start? Like, do department heads say, I need this much money for these projects, step by step or line by line?
Yeah, so, the budget starts with, you'll notice in the budget document, we have a projected line, and that's by review of what's going on up to January, then checking it again in February, checking it again in March. I'm reviewing and then annualizing, projecting out, okay, where we're gonna land. We follow the,
10%.
we follow the same budget amounts. That is, we know, okay, this is what it took to operate. And then we reach out to utilities and reach out to our vendors and see, and often they reach out to us, they know the drill. So by January, start receiving letters, you know, hey, services are gonna go up by 3% next year. So we make sure that the budget is appropriate to operate and propose those budgets. And if there's anything additional needed, then I also need, you know, to know what those projects are. Those are also in the budget message or the narrative in the individual funds. We do, on each fund, we'll do a fund and or department. In the general fund, you've got departments. Do a cover sheet that shows what services were offered. We have what we call performance measures, so you see each year what was done, essentially. And I'll show you some of those examples as we go into it. I've heard it called a status quo budget. I don't like that term. But then we basically start with, well, okay, what did it take to operate? I feel pretty comfortable with that here at Creswell because we do run lean and mean. And if you see a bump in the item, there's usually a line item, there's usually an explanation for that. And we love to field those questions. Great point, Spencer. Yes, we have to, by law, have a budget. We can't operate, and you've heard of government shutdown, and it's real. Unlike the federal government, we can't just print more money. We actually have to balance, so revenues have to equal expenditures. So we talk about funds and government. Governments have to keep a pool of money separate for separate activities. For example, the road funds that come from the state, those are legally restricted to be used on roads only. So we have a road fund or a street fund, and that's legally required. So you think of funds as like different buckets of money, right? And we keep them separate for legal reasons. The budget is prepared and organized by fund, which is a self-balancing account. Or it has a set of balancing accounts to record estimate of resources and requirements for specific activities and objectives. All resources and requirements must be budgeted, and estimates of resources and requirements must be made in good faith. So there has to be some sort of rationale. Like I said, if there's a line item that has a significant rate jump, there should be an explanation of why that particular item has increased.
Is this a use it or lose it type thing?
We don't really have that method here.
Well, you sort of do though, because everything goes, on June 30th, everything in the general fund goes back to fund balance, and then you'd have to reappropriate funds on July 1. So it is, but I think as far as the press to spend the money, I don't, that really hasn't happened either, you know, where I was before either. So I don't think there's a mad dash to make sure they spend all the money in their budget, so.
Yeah, I'd rather roll back in, like you say, in the ending fund balance, and then we reappropriate it the next year. I know when I used to be a municipal auditor, and it would drive me crazy when I would see their, a city's budget and then see their actuals, and let's say they budgeted $1.5 million for a project and they spent nothing, and it used to always drive me crazy because I'd have to go ask why you budgeted $1.5 million. There's reasons. Yeah.
Is the fire department in on our budget?
What's that?
Is the fire department in on the?
No, they're a separate taxing entity.
Okay.
So. There's different types of governmental activities and they require various types of funds, like I said earlier, and state statute outlines the basic fund types and how they may be used in a budget and the accounting process. Fund types, the general fund, this is the biggest fund, maybe not in dollars, but it has a lot of activities going into it. It accounts for revenues, expenditures of the government unit. Every government has a general fund, and then as more activities are added, you pick up various funds like water, sewer. If we had a fire department, a fire. It's usually the largest and most important accounting activity for state and local governments. It normally receives a greater variety and number of taxes and other general revenues. Franchise fees, licenses and permits, state shared liquor tax, cigarette tax, fines, and interest earnings are some of the things that you'll see in the general fund. It may also show multiple programs or organizational units. And Creswell's organizational units are the general administration of the city, culture and recreation, which is our parks, public safety, which is our law enforcement contract, plus our court, and anything involving emergency preparedness. And then planning and land use. Special revenue funds, these are used to account for revenues derived from specific taxes, like we talked about the road fund, for example. Comes from our gas tax, our vehicle registration fees. And it's dedicated or restricted to that special purpose. They're required by statute, charter, or local ordinance to finance particular functions or activities of the government. Special revenue fund may be required for financing either current operating expenditures or capital outlays or both. Which in the road fund, we do both. We operate road maintenance, and we also have capital reserves for street projects. It may have an indefinite limited life or may remain in effect until discontinued or revised by appropriate legislative action. Our special revenue funds right now are the state tax street fund, the bicycle footpath, and the building department fund. Enterprise funds, they're established and account for financing of self-supporting activities. Usually you'll see a user fee related to enterprise funds. The most universal one you'll see is the water fund, sewer utility fund. We have an airport fund that operates as an enterprise fund, although I've seen it operate as a governmental special revenue fund too. They're not huge profit centers, but they are transportation and hubs for travel as well. And then we have a stormwater fund, which we're just starting to kick off. We got our stormwater master plan done last year. The reserve funds, this is a type of fund established by ordinance or resolution to hold monies to be accumulated and expended for purposes specified in ORS 280.050 without submitting the question of establishing the reserve fund to a vote of the electors. Essentially, this is just the way the council can put money aside for large capital projects in the future. The city has the water reserve fund and we have the sewer reserve fund where we transfer revenues over expenditures each year to save up for those large capital projects that are in our master planning documents that have capital improvement lists.
And they've both been doing really well, right?
Yeah, well, sewer's debatable.
Water
Water's doing well.
Water's doing well.
The sewer's just got, to treat and discharge sewer has just gotten extremely expensive for everyone. Everyone in the state of Oregon is struggling right now. I mean, we have a debt service fund, which holds debt and collects the payments. If the council does a local improvement district for Second Street, for example, we'll have a LID fund, local improvement district fund, that'll account for all the payments coming in from the folks that are assessed for the sidewalk on Second Street. And we'll account for those separately. We have capital project funds too. These are created to account for all resources and expenditures used for building or acquisition of capital facilities that are non-recurring major expenditure items by government unit. And that is our capital improvement reserve here for City Hall and the Street Capital Improvement Fund. So the budget structure, if y'all have had a chance to look at the current budget we're in, I don't know if you got a copy of this. We can kind of go over it. I have some examples in the slides too. By law, you have to show the 2 prior years' actual information, which is good data to have. You can see kind of how the city operated in the prior 2 years. Then you have the budgeted amounts for the current fiscal year. We also have a projected amount for the current fiscal year budget. It's kind of a guideline. We have to annualize those numbers so that we have information through, soon to be through March. But by the time it comes to the committee, we're projecting those out for the fiscal year. And then we have the proposed amount for next year, and those come from department requests. Once the budget committee approves it, then you'll see a column that has the approved budget, and then after city council adopts it, you'll see there's a column that says adopted. And I don't know if you can see that example. It's kind of hard to see from here, but the 3 columns on the right are the columns for proposed, approved, and adopted for the next fiscal year. When you get the proposed budget, the approved and adopted columns, of course, will be empty. Revenue should be reflected by category, separating interest earnings, charges for services, taxes, fees, fines, license permits, transfers, and other revenue sources. Revenue should reflect an accurate estimate of what is anticipated during the coming fiscal year. Revenues are not appropriated. So an appropriation is an authorization granted by a legislative body to make expenditures and to incur obligations. So they're not the expenditure side of the equation, but we have to make sure that there are resources there to expend. The fund structure, the expenditures in the funds, you'll see them divided into different categories, and those are outlined in the ORS. The expenditures shall be estimated each budget period and shall be identified by organizational unit or program and shall equal the total resources. The major classifications are personal services, that's basically salary, wages, benefits. Materials and services, that's anything that's purchased outside of house, other than capital outlay. Capital outlay are your major expenditures. We define it as over $5,000 in the budget. Debt services, transfers, operating contingency, which we'll talk a little bit about, and then unappropriated ending fund balance or reserve for future expenditure. And there's a difference there. Ending fund balance cannot be moved up into an expenditure category during the fiscal year if you needed to go to do a major capital project. So in your capital project funds, you'll see reserved for future expenditure, and that can be recategorized into capital outlay during the budget year. Of course, it takes a public notice, a public hearing, and action of the council. So it's not a given, but if it was ending fund balance, that would be end of the line. I mean, you can't go back. You'd have to wait till the next fiscal year. An example of that would be the sewer budget adjustment over on Second Street that needed to occur in this fiscal year because of the construction timeline. Because it was reserved for future expenditure, the council was able to appropriate that as a capital outlay in the current fiscal year. Next slide breaks things out by requirements. Again, personal services, materials and services, capital outlay, and then operating contingency. And then you have all the columns filled out there. You've got an actual results for 2 years prior to the current budget year. Current budget year, projected amounts to be expended in the current budget year, and then your proposed budget, approved budget, and adopted budget. And something that, so the budget has to balance. So if you wanted to increase a particular line item, you would have to decrease another line item. So you kind of have to be prepared if you want to recommend an increase in a certain line, to have also a line item to decrease. Now, in the next slide, the bicycle footpath fund example just shows that total resources match total requirements, and if they don't, we need to take a good look at it and figure that out. Hopefully by the time it gets to you, it's been proved, and that's not the issue. All right, before I move on to the budget process, does anyone have any questions about how the budget is laid out, the format of the budget?
No. I mean, I just look at that, I see all the line items, but by the time it gets to council, it probably is squished down to whatever that is.
Once it goes to the city council, it's appropriated by the total personal services, total material and services. Yeah, I mean, they still get a copy of this,
Yeah.
and it still ties back. But when I go back to a budget as estimates, so the individual line items within materials and service, for example, we may have one that goes over, one that goes under, just because it was unforeseen at the time that we put the budget together. But the total legal appropriations would be the sum, the line summary. So, for example, materials and services. Now it still goes back to good faith in budgeting, right? I mean, you wouldn't expect one line item to go over by 40 grand and another under by 40 grand and without asking questions, right? All right, fiscal year 25-26 budget process. We'll meet on May 6th. There'll be a presentation, the budget message will be read out loud. That's standard form. Spencer, did you read the budget message at your meeting?
I gave a summary because I had a very long budget message, so.
I'll remember that. That's good. That's good to know. You just hit the high points.
Yeah, it was distributed, and then I'd hit the high points of the budget summary.
I might use that.
What's that?
I might use that because it's a long meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the budget message can be like 7 pages long. And yours maybe even longer because you.
Yeah, mine was about 40 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newport has pretty much you do everything. I mean, you've got the arts, you've got the swimming pool, you've got
We have
Yeah.
a lot of moving parts.
lots of moving parts.
Wish you didn't have a well blown up.
Yeah, that was south of Newport.
Oh, yeah.
So, Budget Committee will be able to ask questions of the city manager, budget officer, or department representatives about the proposed budget. We'll make sure to have Cliff and Shelley here, our airport manager, public works director here. But we won't be able to take a deep dive into any of those questions. We'll be taking notes for sure. During the 2-week period that we have to wait for the budget notice to go out and print and then go out again and before we have the next meeting, we use that time to put together a question and response document that we'll post on the website and email you all how to get there. But yeah, we encourage questions. You know, email us your list of questions. I think Dave usually has about 20 questions each year.
I'll try for 25 this year.
You're going for 25 this year.
Got a little more time.
More time.
No, you're pretty thorough, which is good. Which is good. It usually fleshes out the things that changed year over year, and it's sometimes a good reminder. Like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, yeah, that we have to resurface the tennis court, for example, or you know, there's a lot of moving pieces. Not as many as Newport, but there's a lot of moving pieces. And then on Tuesday, May 20th, we'll have another meeting. We'll just basically come together again, go over the Q&A really quick, and then let the budget committee deliberate. Budget committee will, you know, talk about different line items and discuss it, and it'll go back and forth. I forgot to mention the first meeting, the May 6th meeting. There will be a chair elected to run the meeting and the meeting on the 20th of May.
Has that always traditionally been a non-council member for the budget committee, or has it been a council member too?
Traditionally, it has been a non-council member. I mean, it looks good to have, you know, to have somebody from the public be your chair. I mean, it definitely gives the public confidence that, okay, it's not just somebody who's gonna then adopt the budget in June. Sure, that's pretty typical of cities.
Again, I didn't know if it was a rule or not, but I know we always did a citizen chair for the budget committee, not one of the elected officials.
Yeah, it's not a rule here at City Creswell. It definitely does make sure that the citizen has a voice in the meeting. I mean,
I can see both ways too.
yeah, maybe they don't want to necessarily run the meeting.
And you have a council person that is right there, and, you know, if they want to say something, they'll say something, knowing that it's going to get addressed one way or another.
Absolutely, and usually the discussion is pretty good at these meetings. Never lacking for input or discussion. There'll also be a public hearing at the May 20th meeting, so we'll have members of the public coming in and speaking on items in the budget. Yeah, so at the May 20th meeting, it'll be the major deliberations and hopefully the approval at that meeting. Otherwise, we'll have to come back again in another 2 weeks. And that may or may not give us time for noticing before the city council meeting, depending on the dates that we need to publish the notices.
It would look like if you had a third meeting, you'd have to have a special city council meeting later in June in order to make those time schedules. So.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of. Yeah, so we may have, if it doesn't get approved at the second meeting, then we may have to have a third meeting and then a special city council meeting. On Monday, June 9th is the city council meeting, and there'll be another public hearing before the adoption of the budget. And there'll be public hearings on not just the budget itself, there'll also be public hearings. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them. We have public hearings on all the fees that go up, like the water rate, the sewer rate, the public safety fee. We'll have a separate public hearing. And folks will come up and express how they feel about those. And after that public hearing, the council can, again, deliberate the budget, but they'll ultimately adopt the budget, make the appropriations, and then impose the tax levy. After that meeting, we have till July 15th to get 2 copies of the resolution to the county assessor's office, and by December 30th, submit a copy of the adopted budget to the county clerk. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I've got some general questions. I always roll over the ones from prior budget meetings, or budget committee trainings. The one that comes up all the time is, what if I have a question after the initial budget presentation? And that's, feel free to reach out to the city manager. You can email me as well. I appreciate those emails. I really appreciate the questions, Dave. It's a good reminder of, the things that need to be explained on the budget year over year. And like I said, we'll put together that Q&A. We'll share it out to the public, so the public gets to see it. The other counselors get to see it. There's, nobody has information unless everybody has it. Another question that gets asked, especially from citizens on the budget committee, is what if the governing body changes the budget that was approved by the budget committee in a way that the budget committee doesn't approve of? And the governing body has the right to make those changes. However, they can't make a change of more than 10% unless another meeting occurs.
Gotta go back, right?
Yeah, and to clarify, it's not another meeting of the budget committee. It can be another meeting of the budget of the city council, but it requires another LB1, which is the state required budget form, to get published and another public hearing to be held. So you're talking about another city council meeting, hopefully before June 30th, to get it.
To be before June.
Yeah, it has to be before June 30th to get it
That ever
adopted.
happen?
I've never seen it happen. Dave, you were doing this before I was here at Creswell. Did you come close?
We haven't come close to changing a budgeted amount in a fund. So you're saying if the city council's meeting and there's an action to change a particular fund by more than 10%, then the council would not vote on the budget that night, but would make the recommended changes and then hold another meeting, and then at that point they would have their vote?
Plus publish another legal notice, because I think the principle behind that is you got to notice if the council approves a budget that's different, substantially different from that notice, the public should have a right to understand what that change is going to be before council adopts the budget, I think is kind of what the theory is, but.
Yeah, that's correct. You'll notice that when we have the budget committee meetings, it'll be a notice in the paper that just says the City of Creswell Budget Committee will be meeting on May 6th at 6 p.m. But when you see the budget adoption notice for the City Council, it'll actually be the budget in a prescribed form that the state put. I mean, I have to fill out what they call LB1, which is the state's form, and kind of fit our budget into their form. And then it has to be published along with it's actually a public hearing notice, so along with holding a public hearing. So, yeah, you're correct, Dave. There would have to be another city council meeting. It has to be published 5 days before the meeting. So it's not like you can just make the changes and print it and post it on the window and have the meeting the next day. It has to, it takes a little bit of work to get it in the worksheet, get it to the newspaper, give them time to get it published, and then hold a public hearing.
So the council could not adopt a budget with revisions of more than 10%
To any of the
That's
funds.
correct.
until they have another public hearing, and then at that point, then they could adopt a budget.
Yep.
Yep.
So the bottom line is get it right at the budget committee level.
The first time.
Or do it to 9.9.
Get it honed in. Yeah. So another question is, can it be changed after it's adopted by the governing body? So this is after the city council has adopted it in June. Yes, it can be changed. We've had budget adjustments throughout the fiscal year. As counselors, you've seen that. But there's some special requirements there. The council can approve a resolution if it's less than 10% by category. So like personal services, materials and services. So it's, let's say there's 300,000 in materials and services. You can change it by up to $30,000 by resolution
On each-
Without a public hearing.
without a public hearing.
On
Yeah.
each line item or just total?
No, the legal appropriations, like, you know, you've got your individual accounts of all the materials and services, like utilities, cleaning, IT support, and those total up to total materials and services. And then that's the legally appropriated amount adopted by council. There are some additional rules if they want to change more than that, up to your contingency amount, unless there's some revenue source involved. So if you have unanticipated revenues, like, hey, we got a grant for $100,000, and you can hold a meeting to appropriate those funds. Unanticipated revenues is one exception. But if, I didn't really get in depth of contingency is a line item of up to 15% of your operating expenses that you can use to change the other categories with. In other words, you would pull, like, let's say you needed to pull $35,000 up into materials and services. Say there was some reason for it, some good reason for it, and you've got $45,000 in your contingency. You're going to pull that, you're going to subtract that from your contingency, you're going to put it in materials and services, but you're going to have a notice go out and have a public hearing because it's over 10% of your line item, your appropriations line item, but you're limited up to how much you have in contingency. The city of Creswell has a fund balance reserve policy that includes contingency. Contingency should be 15% of operating expenses. So by fund, operating fund, not what we Spencer and I were talking about the earlier before the meeting. The capital reserve funds don't have a contingency. I mean, they're savings for large capital projects, but in our operating funds, you'll have a 15% of materials and services and personal services. So whatever that total is, 15%, it'll be down to contingency. You don't actually spend money on the contingency line. You just move it out of there into your categories if you need a budget adjustment during the fiscal year.
That's done by council.
And that's done by council.
Would that be?
Correct.
Would that include something like the new city manager, like for them coming in and stuff like that?
Yeah, in fact, you're going to be getting a supplemental budget coming up at the April 14th meeting, and that's going to have a number. it's kind of that annual adjustment to a number of things, and so there'll be several adjustments. A good example of one that's being paid for by revenues that were unanticipated is going to be for the building fund, or the building, what do you call it?
Yeah, the building department fund.
Building department fund, because we contract out those services to Cottage Grove. So our expenses are up, significantly from what we budgeted, but because that's a fee-supported fund, our fees are up more than what the expenses are up. So the council will be asked to recognize that additional revenue that's coming in for this year, and that's going to cover the expenses for the additional contractual services, because the level of activity is higher than what was anticipated at the time it was done. So that's one thing. On the city manager search, we're going to have some dollars that are going to need to be appropriated for that, and that'll be picked up there, and that'll be coming from contingency likely.
Correct. Yeah, those will come out of contingency.
Okay.
And one question, Jim, I had on your contingency. Typically, and maybe there's not a typical answer to this, but how much of your contingency are you spending in a normal year? If you have 15% spent, are you spending 10% of that, or 90% of that, or and for some funds that maybe if you have a major sewer problem or a major water problem, you can go through that in a hurry. But in the general fund, how much do you usually end up having left over in contingency?
Yeah, it varies from year to year. Most years, though, it doesn't get touched.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been many years.
When I was looking at it, it didn't seem like it got touched. So that contingency will roll over into your beginning fund balance to start your next fiscal year. And so that's a good sign that your budgets are really pretty tight with what the anticipated expenditures are.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring that up because I don't want to jinx us, but so far.
Sorry I brought it up.
So far it's been pretty predictable, which I appreciate that.
Well, I'm new at this, so I'm sorry I brought it up.
We are fortunate. Creswell has been historically very conservative fiscally, and so it makes it a lot easier on everyone. Your finance director, your city councilors, your city manager, that we don't have these big reactions to things.
I think the other thing too, and Jim deserves congratulations on this, but Creswell is a smaller community, but is recognized for its budget excellence each year, and that you have to meet certain standards in order to receive that recognition, and it means that the budget is transparent and meets a variety of criteria to get that honor. So that speaks very well for the job that Jim does for the city on the budgeting end, and the role that the council has played and the city manager have played in the past in this whole area. So I think, and I was very happy coming in here as interim manager, because I've had a much heavier hand in budget in the past. But you guys are giving me plenty to do, so I'm glad Jim is in the position of really having taken the lead historically in the budget process, and so Creswell's been in great hands that way. So
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a lot to do with the staff too. I mean, we have Cliff and Shelley to thank for that as well. They're very mindful, very watchful of their budgets, and try not to have any surprises. That's the stuff that keeps us up at night,
It's pretty subtle, like seeing how much we're increasing or decreasing. First off, whenever you could decrease water, that's amazing, because they all go up and they never go back down. And just a couple of things, the committees that were on, they were very small increases. So we know that there's not something erratic out there that's forcing these changes. So yes, means we're in good hands, you know, for a lot of years right now, so it's good.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I enjoy it. I do. I'm kind of a geek when it comes to data,
Yeah.
and I do enjoy looking at monthly reports and going, okay, we're trending this way, or oh no. And I'm not a glass half full or half empty. The glass is halfway. You know, I don't
There's some.
try to go too far or too low. Yeah, and let time kind of settle things out. Because sometimes a knee-jerk reaction it just makes erratic trend lines, and it's impossible to follow what's going on. I do understand there are things out of our control. You know, the sewer plant was a shocker. We went from a $15 million solution to $40 million solution to, if we can't get cooperation to the north, it's gonna be an $80 to $100 million, you know, it just keeps going up, and I feel like we have to address it in the present, and we will get to a place where we can take action and there's a resolution, and I'm really hoping, you know, this connection with Metropolitan Wastewater is the direction that the council goes, and that it works out. But it was a shocker to see that $15 million projection more than double over a course of a couple of years. And yeah, who knows? Who knows? Maybe regulatory will be less burdensome in the future. Maybe there'll be, well, I think thinking outside the box was connecting with the Metropolitan Wastewater and making it more of a regional solution and taking the burden off of 2,000 households and making it more of a, you know, a Lane County solution. But yeah, I try to make sure there's no surprises in the budget. So, but please ask questions if you do see stuff that's out of the ordinary, because I want to be able to address those things and kind of explain what's going on. There just are some things that are out of our control.
I do think too, when you're gonna get the budget a week before the first meeting, and if you have questions or you actually want to come in and go through some things so that you understand, especially your first time through the budget process, you know, we're happy to make time to sit down with you and kind of walk you through some issues there, so that the important thing as a policymaker is understanding to the extent you can, you know, what you're looking at, and you have any confusion at all, or, you know, reach out to us so that we can make sure that you know what you're looking at when you're looking at the budget, so.
So are we gonna go over the local budgeting in Oregon?
I provided that manual just because it's a good one to have, more of a reference. Is there something that you want to
Well,
discuss in there?
page 11 is something that in past years I've always brought up, and that's the question. And I didn't know that we were getting the budget a week ahead of time. In past years, we got the budget given to us at the budget meeting.
Yeah, Jim had mentioned that, and I'm a big advocate for getting it out. In fact, our budget committee insisted on getting it in advance so that they could go through it before that first meeting, so. But anyway, you haven't done that here before then?
No,
Okay.
no, and I appreciate the getting it out early. I don't mind that. Yeah, because we can get some of the questions answered. Especially this year, we have a lot of new people, new counselors, new committee members. It's probably a good idea.
So the reason I brought this up with page 11 here, asked a question about halfway down the left column, can I consult with other budget committee members? So if we get the budget a week in advance, council members have it a week in advance, members of the public have it, that means 14 people have the budget a week in advance. can I consult with other budget committee members about details in the budget other than a budget committee meeting? Can the two of you get together for a coffee and talk about the budget? Because you've got a week ahead of time. Can I get together with a counselor or someone else on the budget? Shelley, we used to be, let's get together, Shelley, and sit down and talk. So you open yourself up to that happening, and you haven't had a meeting, and you haven't explained to people that according to this, you can't talk with anybody else on the budget committee about the budget, outside of a budget meeting.
Right.
But 14 people have the budget a week before you meet. And those 14 people, only 3 of us are here tonight. So there's at least 11 people who get the budget and think, well, I should call so-and-so, they're on the committee too, we should talk about, let's come next week and ask those questions about this item, because it doesn't make sense to me. Just having the conversation, you now have violated budget law. So maybe if you're gonna get the budget out, people, we can advance, you give them really
Clear
warning
Yeah.
for your eyes only.
Yeah, I don't think we'll keep them at the front desk. I think it'll be an individual come in and pick it up type of scenario, for that reason.
But yeah, I think we can give instructions with that too, because again, the whole spirit of the budget is to have transparent discussions.
Absolutely.
At public meetings that people can participate in, not having individual private conversations is really the spirit of the entire process. And that, that hasn't been, and certainly in my history, that hasn't been a problem, releasing it early. But people have to understand that too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think being in Lake County, we were all too familiar with, was it Handy case? Where I think that's, and that was a bunch of serial emails back and forth, and it came out that they were having private meetings and instead of having them in front of the public eye, and yeah, it ended up in a really bad situation. I'm pretty sure if I remember right, there were some hefty fines posted.
And those are personal obligations to the individual. So if there's ever an ethics charge for any of us, we have to defend ourselves. The city doesn't defend you in an ethics complaint. So yeah, the bottom line is go through it. You can talk to Jim or I about any of the stuff because we aren't voting members of the committee.
Right.
But shouldn't be consulting with other members of the committee prior to except in the meetings themselves, so.
Yeah, please, you deliberate all, in the whole meeting, yeah.
Well, we've encouraged members of the budget committee in that 2-week interval between the first meeting and the second one, not only talk to staff, but get out and talk to community members, get input. Well, once again, if we get the budget a week ahead of time, and if you talk to your next door neighbor, and then they get all up in arms and they post it on community Facebook site, and then you read it, or somebody else reads it, and they're not aware of it, and then they shoot off an email to a counselor saying, hey, I saw on Facebook that this is in the budget, and I'm upset about that, and they send you an email, and then you're thinking, well, so it does open up the question of, communication. So, I mean, however you want to caution everybody who gets it, talk to Jim, talk to me, but please don't talk to other people about this prior to our first meeting.
Right.
Because the word can get out in Creswell, real quick. Oh, yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I didn't know if we were covering this or not.
And the other thing, on those community discussions, between the two meetings, there's plenty of time for people to be aware of what's going on after that first meeting, so. And that public hearing is on the second meeting, after we've had this public deliberation on the budget and presentation of the budget. There's plenty of opportunity for the public to be involved, both at that point and then also when the council's holding their public hearing prior to adopting the budget. So those are the two prime times for public involvement in the budget process. And you don't hold a hearing at your first meeting at all?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. I believe. Do we let the public have input? I can't recall. There's public
There's a
input.
public comment period.
Yeah, I think there's a public comment
I
period.
think, yeah, I think
I mean, that's
there might even be a
standard.
requirement to allow comments
Yeah,
at both the meetings.
and there is another we have to talk about state shared revenues. That's required for us to receive state shared revenues. So we'll have a public hearing on that. Now that I think about it, I didn't put that in the presentation, but state shared revenues are liquor tax, cigarette tax, basically all the sin tax, right? All those get distributed to cities based on their population percentage of the total state population. And in order to receive those, you have to let the public speak. Well, you have to notice what you intend to spend them on. And then you have to let the public comment on it. Have a public hearing. And so we'll submit to the Oregon Department of Revenue after everything's said and done, the budget's been adopted. We'll submit the resolution to adopt the budget. We'll submit that an affidavit that says that we've held the public hearing for state shared revenues as well.
Do you get much citizen participation at the budget meetings?
No.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. You go through all these efforts, and hot years, if we would have 2 or 3 people coming to, during these public comments. So I was just curious if the dynamic was.
Sometimes we don't even have budget committee members who show up.
We wouldn't know that by Facebook. There's a lot of complaints that day,
Well,
so.
it's pretty boring. I mean, we do water, sewer, parks, streets. It's pretty boring stuff, right?
If you're passionate about it.
I don't think it's boring, it's just tedious. So.
It's tedious. There we go. That's the term. I mean, we've heard that the city likes to have movies in the park, so it should be no surprise that movies in the parks in the budget. Those types of things. Now, if we cut out movies in the park, we might have some people coming to the meeting.
Yeah.
If you want to make it more lively, just cut out some of those things,
Never been my goal to make it more lively.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think the most controversial are probably the fee increases. Nobody likes those. I get it. I totally get it. Maybe some public projects, but they're generally talked about months, if not years, prior to them actually hitting the budget. So you'll also get a capital improvement plan that's got the current year budget, again projected what we're gonna be expend on those projects. And these are projects of $25,000 or greater. So these are the big ticket items, and it's broken down by administration, which is the city hall building, if there's any large projects to improve city hall. Culture and recreation, so any park improvements. For instance, we had the restrooms at 2nd Street Park. Water, sewer, streets. All those projects are in the master planning documents. So we have master plans that talk about our current situation, improvements that need to be made over the years. They'll generally have a list of capital improvements in those plans. We use those plans to put together this more encompassing citywide capital improvement plan. It's a good way to look to see where we're at today, what's coming up in the next year's budget, but it also has 4 more years. And then a column for future if it's something that we want to keep on the radar.
So a quick question for you, like, for the water and the wastewater, I know the chemicals that get delivered and stuff like that, that price can fluctuate throughout the year. So, and I know you talked about emergency kind of like 10% or something like that, we can go up on it. Is it the same way with like the water and the wastewater and stuff like that, so we can go with that 15% or that 10% as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I know it has a certain fund, and so that's why I was kind of curious about it, because that's something different.
Because in Jim's budget, he's talking to Cliff, and we're trying to get an understanding of what's happening with the chemicals and utility costs and all these sort. So the numbers will be higher generally speaking, the numbers will be higher in the proposed budget than what they are now, anticipating what those trends are. But if they ended up being substantially higher than that, then you'd have to Jim would bring a supplemental budget or a budget amendment to the council to act on that, to allocate a portion of the contingency to cover those costs.
Well, I
But
know,
but
like-
those are big enough funds, because in the
Okay.
water fund as an example, what's the budget for that, in round numbers?
In round numbers, I always remember 1.4 million.
Okay, so 1.4 million, so 10% is a pretty good number.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you'd have to have something pretty dramatic happen to push you beyond the contingency. But if you had something that pushed you beyond the contingency, you also have, and are you using the reserve for future expenditures in water and sewer?
We are not using them.
Just contingency then?
Yeah, we have not run into a situation where it's exceeded our contingency.
Okay.
Yeah, because contingency in those funds is several $100,000, so.
Is that kind of stuff bought, like, I know with fuel with some cities and states and stuff, they buy so much per year, they're guaranteed so much per gallon if they promise to buy this many gallons. Is it kind of like that too with this, or?
We don't have any contract guarantees
Oh,
like
okay.
that, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that we do enough volume to do that.
Oh, I know, I used to deliver them. I
Yeah.
used to deliver those big totes.
No,
Yeah, they're not fun.
Water fund requirements, wow, yeah, I stand corrected. Oh, that's with capital outlay, never mind. Yeah, it's still right around 1.4.
So basically, you got 140,000 in contingency.
Right.
And that's gonna cover most things. Now, if the city did have an emergency and it's a declared emergency, then you can utilize other sources of funds to pay for that, but that has to be done in a declared emergency, so.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, like when we had the ice storm and we had to operate on generators for, what was it, a week, 2
Yeah,
weeks, something like that.
week and a half, yeah.
Week and a
Yep.
half. Yeah, I mean, the fuel was expensive, so we had FEMA declared an emergency, or rather, there was a declared emergency. FEMA came in and said, hey, we'll cover you. The council met and declared an emergency as well, so that opened up some more budgeting. That opens up the procurement options, which you kind of talked about last
So
time.
you don't have to follow your normal procurement operations if it's a declared
So
emergency.
did the city manager declare the emergency, or did the council do that afterwards?
I think city manager, what's that?
During that ice storm a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I think the city manager, if it's like it was in Newport, city manager can declare it until the next council meeting, and then council.
Well, actually, we had to wait for Lane County to declare a county-wide state of emergency. Then individual cities could declare one, which we then did. I sat down in the office with Heather and with Michelle with one light on in the entire building, no other electricity, and Michelle had got her computer, her cell phone, and had downloaded the Lane County one, and I hand wrote out a declaration, and about that time, Heather said, oh, we do have one computer that operates, and the printer, you could type all that out, and I said, well, I've just handwritten about 3 pages here. that I can hardly read anyway. But yeah, we had to wait for Lane County too, and then I think the mayor is the one who declared it or something like that. And then we had to have a meeting, we met
confirm
next
it.
door, because this building is so funky electronic, you can't meet in half the building. So we met next door in the, where we could just use a key to unlock the doors. And we had a special meeting of the city council, and the council voted then to declare the state of emergency.
In the next budget year, we had $30,000 in the budget for a generator for city. Well, we have the generator. There's the thing, it just didn't get wired
Never
to
wired.
all of the panels. So there's
Right.
5 or 7 electrical panels for the whole building.
It's still not wired, is it?
That we're still waiting on the permit approval. It's because it's complicated, it has to go through, review.
So we can't have another emergency.
Yeah, I used to live over by that
We
generator.
have any generator?
So when that thing popped up, I heard it.
Yeah, it will power the entire building, for whatever reason, and I wasn't here.
Yeah.
They just paid to have it done to one panel, which was the IT room, the front computer where they could still ring up utility bills and do the basic function. But nobody else in the building has power.
We wouldn't open, we had to come in the back door,
Yeah.
then open the doors.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think the
you have to
new,
force
the new
them
locks
back.
now are battery backup operated, so we should be able to get in the building with the key cards
Yep.
without power, so.
Yeah, and if it's after,
The new locks.
it's after hours, we can also remote in. It's also a cloud-based, so yeah.
Yeah. I know I was working with my laptop plugged into my pickup inside it with it running so I could stay warm while I was doing my dispatch. That was a fun week and a half.
Well, it's probably why they our professors made us do accounting on paper with pencil. Even though we had computers at our disposal, we had to learn how to do it in case of an emergency.
Yep.
So, but yeah, we did, the council did appropriate $30,000 in the budget to get this city completely wired up so we can operate the entire building in the event of emergency, which will be important for having city council meetings. I think the emergency meeting was, Dave, you said the emergency meeting was at the community center because the door lock's here, yeah.
Yeah,
And that building's pretty cold.
Oh, it was
Cement and,
very cold. Of course, there wasn't any power anyway.
The Generac system that's here,
Generac, what's,
that's another generator that, it's propane, natural gas.
oh no, we've got this huge Caterpillar
Yeah.
monstrosity in
Fuel.
the
It's huge.
back. It'll power this building and the fire department next door, so. In fact, I think Cliff said it'd power like the whole block, but yeah, we're not. So it has ample power, it just wasn't completely wired in for whatever reason.
Brought my camp trailer to the house and parked it in the driveway and put my mom in it, and I had all the power I wanted.
So, yeah, no surprises in the budget. You should see, even the capital projects should be things that we've talked about.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Good to go.
I talked about the divider pages, if you go through the budget. One of the things I really enjoy, when we built what they call performance measures into the departments. Performance measures just kind of explain, okay, where is our money going, right? It's just numbers in tables in this report. But what the public really needs to know is, and I was curious, I wanted to know, okay, what is this money doing? So the waterfront, for example, in the current budget on page 60, we report the millions of gallons that are produced in the year. There's a mention of how many miles of water main line there are. There's 30 miles of water main line in the city that the city has to maintain. Number of fire hydrants that are flushed each year. These guys in Public Works, they flushed, last year they flushed 242 fire hydrants. They just have to crew out make sure that they're working. Number of leak repairs, and then any special projects they did last year was they installed a 750-foot 8-inch main line. Seeded. And then the main goals for the fiscal year budget are also listed below, and that's where we kind of try to tie in the council's strategic plan. What has the council been telling us what needs to get done? So really, yeah, you're gonna sit through this budget meeting this year and help deliberate that budget and get it adopted. But just because that budget's adopted, you're always in the budget process. So in July, when you're having a city council meeting, you're discussing this new thing that's a priority for the council, and we're taking notes. We're literally taking notes and making sure that we put it in the file for when we go to pick up the budget again in January and start drafting the budget. So yeah, you're always working on the budget. And that's why the board that recognizes the awards and reviews these budgets, they really stress tying these budgets to the council's strategic plan. So, and then when we do the next strategic goals update or next strategic plan review, I think it's due again in 27, so not next fiscal year.
But I think council may want to consider going through and doing an update once you have a new manager in place, and because you've got a very different council than was in, I think Alonzo's the only one that was on the council when the strategic plan was adopted.
I think so.
And so it's going to be important to make sure that that's a living document that is reflecting, the goals of the council and the manager. But I give the manager some time to get their feet on the ground to really be able to play a meaningful role, and for the new council to get a good, understanding of kind of the direction they want the city to go in, and that'll be a good time to look at updating that strategic plan, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, any other questions about the budget process?
Get right here, let's get this thing done.
Okay. Yeah, get her done in 2 meetings and adopted in June, and everything will be on schedule, so.
Yeah. Yep. That's the goal, and then we started it all over again.
No, I've read lots of these budgets. But I don't have any questions. If I have anything else, I'll reach out to you or Spencer.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That wrap her up,
Well,
Jim?
unless anybody else has any questions, I'll call this meeting adjourned at 7:22. Thanks, everyone.
Great presentation.
Yeah, nice job, Jim.